Hey Stuart.
All right, Ben, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man.
Good.
Thanks for doing this.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm really excited, actually. I
Yeah,
can't wait.
yeah, good. Yeah, you got some big news.
It's absolutely huge. It's the
Yeah,
biggest news. I'm so excited, Ben. I can't tell you. Like I've been waiting for today for so long. I can't
yeah,
wait to show everyone what we've done.
yeah. Well, I thought, you've been working on this for a long time. I mean,
Mm.
a really long time, probably as long as I've known you.
Yeah,
You've been putting this together. But just, rather than just sort of diving straight in, clearly you have some big news to announce and all the rest of it. But rather
yeah,
than just sort of diving straight in, I thought it would be good, maybe just a bit of background, firstly about you, and
hmm
the motivation, the leading up to what you're probably going to talk about later, and just a bit of background.
yeah, of
I mean,
course.
so you've been called the Robin Hood of colour.
Mm.
um, which I always think is a really appropriate description, knowing what I know
Mm.
about you. But, do you want to sort of just talk about why
Yeah,
that's a thing, or, why
yeah.
somebody
I
would
mean,
call you that?
it's a big thing, isn't it? Because there was, as far as I'm concerned, only one Robin Hood.
Yeah,
So it's quite a lofty thing for people to sort of call you. So I'm not really 100% sure it's that, but it's like that in
yeah,
the remember what he did. He stole from the rich to give to the poor, didn't he? That was his whole idea. And I think kind of what I've been doing is taking these sort of revolutionary colours that ordinary people can't access, and kind of trying to make them available, and at the same time perhaps show why they're important and encourage people to use them. So I can sort of see the Robin Hood thing, taking from one place and giving to another.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it sort of works for me from the point of view of like the democratization,
Mm.
that particularly with your sort of I mean, it might be helpful for, because people may not know the Anish Kapoor story, but, just to
Mm.
maybe talk about that as the first iteration of that idea.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it actually sort of predates that.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realise that I've been passionate about this since I was a very, very small child, and growing up, wanting to make art like most kids do, and we didn't have the money or the resources to really have materials, so I was kind of making stuff out of the kitchen, like ransacking my mum's cupboards and making things and kind of making a mess, and I never sort of stopped doing that. So it
And you're
sort of
good,
started there.
just to be clear, you're talking about making your own paints there,
Yeah,
your own colours. Yeah.
making my own paints, my own colours from things I could find in the kitchen. And then as I got a bit older, I started to realise, that maybe art itself was a rich person's sport. Maybe
Yeah.
I wasn't sort of allowed in those galleries, and it would be better if I got a proper job and trained to be a lawyer or a doctor or whatever. That's what everyone around me was saying. But I knew that art was something that I really needed and that made sense to me as a human. But it felt like I was excluded in some way from that. So I just didn't have that sort of access or that privilege. And I think that played all the way through. And then, coming to the Kapoor thing, it kind of all came to a head where I'd been making my own paints to use in my own work. I've been doing these exhibitions all around the world. I mean, I was an artist at that point, known for my work. But then he was extremely wealthy, almost a billionaire, and he got the rights to Vantablack. And a lot of people don't even understand what that even means. And there's so much speculation on the internet around what that is. And there's people saying, "Oh, well, it was never a paint that artists could use. Why are they complaining about?" And all this sort of thing. So there's a huge amount of misunderstanding around that. But really, what it said to me was that someone who had that influence, that wealth, and that power could go to a company like Surrey Nanosystems that made it and say, "I want an exclusive agreement. I want to be the only person in art to use this." And to me and a lot of people in the art world, that seemed very, 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 very strange, especially given the company would work with architects or car companies, or in fact, they coated a whole building in it. Yet if you told them you were an artist, they turned you away. And it was the only company in the world that was turning artists away because they were artists. And so many artists work with so many fabricators, and they'll work with anybody if you can afford to pay. So the exclusivity seemed wrong. and immoral and like a monopoly and exclusionary, you know.
Yeah.
So I put my Pink is Pink on the internet as a piece of performance art, really, to challenge that. And I said, you know, by adding the pink to your cart, you confirm you're not Anish Kapoor, you're not going to give any to Anish Kapoor. And it was a joke, it was funny, and I just wanted to make a point. I was never expecting anybody to buy any paint. And of course they did, and it went completely crazy. And here we are almost 10 years later with what I just made. And one thing led to another, and the community supported me all the way through. And they understood that what we're doing here in the studio is different and is important. And it's just been amazing. You know, what a journey. Just phenomenal. I'd never imagined any of it, really.
Yeah. That's what I find so fascinating about the sort of Culture Hustle project, that that it's become this kind of vehicle for so much of that stuff. You know, people react energetically to it, and I think they sort of understand on that level that what they're doing is being represented by you. You know, being represented by you in the face of, you know, big corporations and big business who, as you say, you know, they make these colours, and the artist is always the last thought. You know, big business is the thing that has first dibs on this stuff.
Well, I mean, I think the fundamental difference is that those companies see the artist as the consumer or the purchaser or the customer. And I see that in my life all the time. Like, some people relate to me who don't really understand the project and what we're doing here. And they take on the role of the customer, and they get very upset when I don't talk to them like how Amazon talk to them. And I'm like, well, I don't see you as a customer. You're an artist, I'm an artist. We're doing this together. We're learning as we go. This is evolving. This isn't like a done thing. This is a process.
Yeah.
And you're along for the ride with me, and it's a two-way street, and we're making these colours together. I mean, the beautiful thing is, you know, the community beta test this stuff. They give me feedback on it. They're part of it. I don't see them like a customer ever. And I think that sometimes people get upset about that, because hang on a minute, why aren't you treating me? Because I don't want that relationship.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what I mean about a representative. You are representing the people in, or the artist in face of this stuff that goes on all the time.
Well, I try.
Yeah. I mean, I think the another thing that sort of interests me is the history, like how we ended up here, you know, and what that means, you know, like the history of colour, like how, you know, I know it's a big one, but, you know, how colour evolved, you know, accessibilities to colour in, you know, the Middle Ages, or, you know, however far back you go, you know, and how that became a property for studios and artists, and, you know, just the history of how we've ended up where things are owned by corporations, or where, you know, specifically artists are excluded from use of certain colours, as in the Anish Kapoor thing, and why that, you know, clearly, you know, you understand the history a bit, then you can see why the Anish Kapoor was such a huge deal for you.
Yeah,
You know,
I think,
because it's not an isolated incident. It goes all the way back, you know. So it'd be
goes.
great if you could just talk about that.
Definitely. I think it's really fascinating how people, it's fine. You know, I think people take paint and colour for granted. You know, it's just part of the background. Why is it important? Why does it matter? And often people say that to me, like, why should I care about this? Like, and the truth is, it's because we don't really understand the history and what's happened and how we've kind of got here, where we are. So to understand it, you know, we do have to look back a little bit. And I think, you know, my sort of, should you want to do like a potted history of?
Well, yeah. I mean,
we got it like a quick whistle stop kind of. Okay. Basically, what happened was arts existed since day dot, since the start of time. And the first thing that human beings did was drew on the walls of caves. And they did that with a kind of reddish kind of ochre colour that was iron-ish. And we saw handprints, and we saw drawings of cattle, and the caves at Lascaux are very famous. We reckon they're about 25,000 years old. Yeah. And they were discovered by mistake and all the rest of it. It's a great story. I won't go into it now. But human beings have done this. We've got colour made something out of it and stuck it on stuff to say, we were here and this is what was going on. And I think it's a function of humanity to be able to do that. Roll the clock forward a bit, we kind of get into sort of medieval ages and this sort of thing. And artists now are making work, of course, we're making paintings. And and that's tied into all sorts of stuff, but mainly sort of religion, really, and our ideas about the world outside the world we're in, what is divinity and what is God, and all of these lofty things. And the church are funding a lot of this work, of course, and we see it even in really ancient art, artifacts coming out of like India and ancient China and places like that. We see art, of course, and colours, the backbone of all of that stuff. I mean, even the Egyptian paintings inside the pyramids, I mean, the blues are incredible. I mean, they've stood the test of time. You've seen the reds. So it's built in. And the ancient Egyptians had makeup. I mean, they were painting their faces with colours. So it's in us. And then the artists started to become the people that made these things, and they weren't just members of the community, they were the artisans and the artists, and they would do that for us, and they would be good at it, I suppose, and they would be above the others in that they were accomplished in that craft, and that was their role in society. And they would make the colours in their studios. They'd have to. And I think the important thing to understand, like, what is a paint, is basically a colour and something to stick it to stuff with. So oil paint is a bit of oil and a bit of colour mixed together, so they'll stick on a canvas. And acrylic paint is an acrylic resin and some colour, so it'll stick on stuff. And obviously the artists were doing this in their studios, and they would have assistants that helped them mix up these colours. Now, the colours themselves could come from the earth. We could grind up minerals and rocks and plants. Or later, they could be made in a science lab. Maybe they were grown. But in those days, they'd come through the Silk Road, and they'd come from like China, India, and they'd come into Europe, and they would be traded. And they'd be quite hot property, Something like lapis lazuli, for example, the blue, ultramarine blue, was so precious. You can't even imagine. Like, it's more expensive than gold. And to meet one of these people who could trade it, these people were called colour men. You'd have a hookup, you'd go and meet them. The studio would meet them, a deal would be done, the colour would be acquired. It was all sort of like that. And actually, some Michelangelo paintings never got finished because they ran out of funding to pay for the lapis lazuli. So in my mind, this is a bit like Hollywood movies now. This is the latest special effect, the latest technology. Can we get it? We don't want the other studios to know how we're making this colour. What we're doing, we're going to guard the secrets. It's all of that. So it's quite exciting. And then what happened was the artists actually used to store the paint they made in the studio in pig bladders, bladder of a pig, until they invented paint tubes, collapsible tubes like what toothpaste comes in. Artists invented that to store the paint. And from that point on, all hell broke loose, really. Because what that meant was we could store it and transport it, but it also meant we could sell it. And then commerce entered the equation. So artists could now buy ready-made colours, done for you. And then we get into the sort of industrialization of that. The factory arrives, the Industrial Revolution, and it changes the whole world. I mean, it doesn't just change art, but being able to buy paint in a tube changed art in the same way the printing press changed our ability to read. Because before the printing press, you couldn't afford to read books. And now they were available. And knowledge spread. So ready-made colours existed. And then, of course, commercial interests came in. So they decided, how can we make more money out of it? How can we buy cheaper pigments? How can we make more affordable mixes? Can we cheap out on this? How do we standardise it? How do we mass produce it? How do we get it made in China and import it by the bucket load? And then it became almost like everything else. And I believe what we lost was a lot on the sort of cutting room floor of that process, actually. And I know that because if I go to the National Gallery and I look at the Wilton Diptych and I look at that lapis lazuli blue, or I go and see Van Gogh and I come across those cadmium oranges and reds and yellows that so excited me when I was an 8-year-old boy and I saw them for the first time, that stuff is different. It's just better.
Yeah.
And that's where we are now. We buy our paint, order it on Amazon, comes next day, walk into the works, you can buy one for £1, you squeeze it out, and you wonder why it doesn't work.
Mm. Mm. I find that fascinating. This idea that colour has a value, and that value has slowly been degraded by the process of production, and the way capitalism does, I suppose. We're obsessed with this idea of choice, so instead of one yellow, you have 15 in a range, and,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. I mean, they're vast. I mean, you look at the other people that make paint. I'm not saying they make bad paint. I mean, there's some brilliant paint makers. But, there are 200 yellows.
yeah,
It's overwhelming.
yeah,
And, I've never kind of got my head around that, because I think that, we're forgetting how to mix our colours, actually. And I think it gives an artist a lot of freedom and control. And I think we're scared of that. We want it done for us. But actually, we can regain a bit of power by understanding I can make these colours how I want them for my work, for what I
yeah,
want to say to the world.
yeah. That's a really interesting point, actually. Like why, what effect that has had on the artist or the artist's psyche. If there is such a generic thing, that what has it done to people's ability to paint and to like mix color, like you say? What effect has that had on people?
I don't know. I mean, on one hand, it's nice because it's easy, right? And it's
Yeah,
consistent, and you buy the same colour and you get the same thing and you know what you're doing. But also, we don't see that much innovation in terms of paint, particularly in painting, where, I want people to have their palette and their colours and their voice. And in all
yeah,
my early shows and exhibitions, I'd make my own paint for each show. I have my own colours.
yeah,
And it felt like it was part of the process, and certainly in that older art, mixing the colour and the colour element was huge.
yeah,
And of course, we live in a conceptual world now. It's as much about what you're saying with the work and what you're trying to communicate. Of course, all of that. But, you try and watch a movie that isn't well graded and the colour's off, and it's not a nice experience. So colour's vital to our lives. I mean, our whole life is colour.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm fascinated by the idea of sort of as money, people are looking to make colour cheaper, that's somehow degraded the paint, but in the process, maybe the artist has been degraded as well, I
Well,
mean,
I
maybe
think
that's a bit of a reach, but
no, it's not a reach. I think initially, for sure, artists had access to the best colour. Small batches of brilliant colour, and they knew how to process it to get the most out of it, ahead of everyone else, ahead of interior design paint. The car industry didn't exist, so there's no
yeah,
cars to paint. Now what we find is it's about buying power. And we see that in the studio all the time, because we buy the best pigments in the world and we look everywhere for them, and we leave no stone unturned when we try and do that. And the price fluctuates. It's more like buying tea or coffee or fine wine. It's a commodity. It moves. So if your blue paint in the works costs the same as the red paint, something's up here to start with, because what's going on, that does not make sense. So there's a fluctuation in those things. But also the point I'm making is that those with the biggest money have the biggest access. So if you're ICI and you own Dulux and you do most of the interior paint in the world for houses, you get pick of the crop when it comes to pigment. Automotive industry, cars, they're top of the list. What's actually happened is artists have been relegated to the back end of that now, where we kind of get the dregs of those industries, which is really sad. And also because the money's not there, no one really is really into innovating for the artist. So we're seeing all the innovation in cosmetics. They're doing wonderful things with colour. Cars, buildings and architecture, coatings. But we're not really seeing it in art. We're not seeing it for creative use. And not that those things aren't creative, of course, cars and buildings are, but we're not seeing it in terms of artistry and that kind of craft. Those innovations don't come there, or when they arrive, they're 20, 30, 40 years late, which is really sad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, this is why, again, go back to my point, and, the idea that you sort of representing artists suddenly, that in light of what you've just said, there's incredible context, because that's why the Culture Hustle project is that was the idea, that you end up representing the artists because of these things.
Yeah, I think ultimately what I'm saying in all of these things, whether it's Tiffany privatising blue or, an estate protecting, whatever it is I'm saying, hey, what about the rest of the artists? Hey, what about art? What about us? Don't you think we should be in the discussion? Why are you only giving it to one person? Wouldn't it be cooler if everyone could do something with this?
Yeah.
Why are we being left out? We're creative. We've got good ideas. We should be at least have a seat at the table in these discussions. That's all I'm doing.
I just think it's mad. It's so mad when you talk about it in this way, that artists are excluded. It's bizarre.
Yeah,
or just fobbed off with stuff. No, absolutely.
It's flipping hard, and to be like, oh, it's not for you. You don't deserve good materials. We're the Ferrari factory, so we get the best red in the world. Well, of course you do. Of course you do. Well, what about someone who's doing their end of year show who wants to make a series of red paintings? Can't they have great red too? Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Isn't it worth it? Yeah. There's no money in it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see in that way, I'm banging on about it, but, how the position of the artist in society has changed because of that, and also how an artist might see themselves, I mean, we've spoken long about, education system and how, art in schools has been devalued and all the rest of it. It's all part of the same thing for me.
It's all the same thing. It's the role of artists in society and being on the back foot, and all these misconceptions about us. That whatever it is, there's so many myths around what artists are and not. That it really isn't helpful anymore, because I really think we can contribute, especially in the world we're in now, Ben, with the AI coming, with what's going on. I mean, it's times like this we really need artists.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
This is the moment. Now is when we need the artists to stand up and start making stuff and talking.
Yeah. So, so there you go. That's a lot of context for what you're about to say, I think. I mean, so you have an announcement. Do you want to talk about that now? Do you just jump straight into it, or
do we just do it?
Yeah, let's do it.
So I'm really excited. I haven't just made one new colour. I've made a set of 9 colours. And as you said before, I've been working on this for about a decade now. It's been an unbelievable process. It's been hell. It's been exciting. There's been ups, there's been downs. It's been completely wild. But I've done it. And what we're talking about is the fact that it's quite a lofty goal. I thought if I ever did anything with this Culture Hustle thing, what I'd want to do is actually revolutionise the building blocks of painting itself. To do that, I know it's ridiculous, but can I give artists best paint they've ever used that can do more than they've ever been able to do before? Can I actually reinvent paint? So to do that, I realised I needed a palette that people could mix together to make millions of colours without having to keep going back to the art shop to buy more. I also realised it needed to be the extreme best pigment available in the world at this moment in time. And it needed to use the absolute best technology to make sure it covered perfectly, was consistent, and was beautiful, and was like nothing anyone had ever used before, so that they could make paintings that they could never make before. So it's been difficult. It led me into avenues of having to beat cadmium, which is the holy grail of orange, yellow, and red, and we can talk orange, yellow, and red, which we can talk about more, which was a scientific feat that no one's been able to do. The automotive industry haven't known that, we've done it, which was a huge achievement for us and the whole team here. It was unbelievable celebrations around that. So what I've done is I've made a series of 9 acrylics that I fundamentally believe are the absolute best paints in the world that have ever been created. And hopefully it's something that, if I, God forbid, get knocked over by a bus tomorrow, it's something that I sort of left that for a long time will be making things better.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Okay, so what you've just said is that you're basically reinventing
Paint.
how artists use paint and paint itself, and giving back in the process, giving back to artists the ability to mix their own color, to own those shades that they create.
Yeah.
And you've done it in a way that doesn't use cadmiums.
Yes, that's absolutely right.
Wow. Incredible.
And really, looking at the science behind acrylic paint, they are acrylics, is that, and I choose acrylic because that's where the frontier science is. That's where the cutting edge is. It's in acrylic resins. Oil paint is maxed out. Oil will only ever be linseed oil. There's only so much you can do. But the minute you get into acrylics, we can do so much stuff. The doors just open with that technology. So we've been able to utilize that, the new resins that are coming out, because a lot of the paints, that you're used to using, were actually invented in the 50s and 60s. And the companies that produce them are really scared to change the formulations because people are used to them and they don't want to alienate their audience, etc. So it's sort of like, imagine if we were still listening to the music that came out in the 1950s.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's great. Yeah. It still works. I love it. But there's new stuff as well.
Yeah. Or like watching a 1950s telly, or you know what I mean? If you compare how colour was represented in those environments,
Exactly. It's the same sort of thing.
And just to be clear, what's the deal about cadmiums?
Well, basically, cadmiums are your yellows, your oranges, and your reds, and they're extremely toxic. In fact, the EU banned them, essentially. However, they are by far the best orange, yellow, and red pigments that you can get. They're just brilliant, and they're brilliant for a few reasons. If you've ever painted yellow over some lined paper, you realise it's very see-through, it's quite translucent. Cadmium doesn't really do that. It's got better coverage, it's more opaque. And also the actual colour payoff is just really strong. The light fastness is high. Van Gogh used it, so if you know the sunflowers, you know how vibrant those colours are. You can't recreate them on a screen or in a book, with print, normal sort of full colour printing. These colours are so rich and so powerful and so potent, yet they're very toxic. So we don't really want them ending up down the sink in our waterways, in our systems. We're all very conscious now that the planet is in crisis. We don't really want to be putting toxic stuff down the bin. To manufacture them is dirty for the planet. We don't really like that either. But they're as good as it gets. And the paint I was making did have cadmium in it. And I put a nice warning on it, and I told everyone to be conscientious because I thought artists needed the best materials. So what we set about doing was not just making a synthetic cadmium, which is what a lot of people have done. I mean, all the big art materials, you can get a cadmium hue, they call it. But actually, I've tested all of them. We've run them through the lab. We're obsessed with this. None of them come anywhere close to the cadmiums. They just failed miserably. But the exciting thing I can tell you is we've actually made a yellow, an orange, and a red that are better than cadmium. They're more opaque, the colour's richer, they're more light fast, they're more reliable. We've actually made better yellow, orange, and red than artists have ever had in any form so far.
Amazing. And the artists are going to be first in line. They're not going anywhere else. They're
Absolutely.
Not going to...
Yeah. They're like, if they want to paint a car, paint a car. But it's not for that necessarily. So we're first. The artists are first. And it's very, very exciting. Do you want to see them?
Yeah.
Is it time
to... Of course, yeah.
Okay, so...
I think we might talk about them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I've called
Wow.
them. I don't know if you can see them, but I've called them pure: black, white, yellow, pink, purple, it's orange. I know, it's crazy. So we've got all the colours of the rainbow, basically, and they're completely intermixable. It's a system that works together. We also have some other mediums with these, so you can make them flow, you can make them glossy, so basically you can make them however you want.
Okay. So you're
Um,
really so you're really talking about being able to mix any shade with those 9 colours on the table, and
Absolutely.
any consistency with your, what are they? Flow.
You've got flow, body, and gloss, so you can make it
Okay.
super shiny, really thick and chunky, like in pastel oils.
Okay.
Or you can make it flow almost like a flowy thing. So you've got
Yeah.
a lot of control, and there's a lot to tell you about them because they've each got their own stuff going on because they're all
Okay.
each treated individually. They've all got their own different pigments, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Incredible.
yeah.
I love
I
that. I
mean,
just find that idea so amazing. Like that. Like, when you walk into an art store and you see that vast rack of tubes on the wall, and then what you're saying is,
this is all you need.
this is all you need.
This is what you need, and a bit of self confidence that
That's,
you can mix it together to get what you want. But
yeah.
yes, this is what you need. And what can I tell you about them? I mean, the first thing is simply because of the quality. I mean, when you use great resin, it's open. So this is the stuff that sticks it to stuff. When it's open, it can take more pigment. So we can put lots more colour in the resin. That means that the coverage is very strong. It means it goes further. So essentially you get more for your money. It's more affordable in a way because, one of these will go like 4, 5, 6 times further than a really cheapy one from, a cheap craft shop.
Yeah.
So it's reliable. You only need one coat, maybe two, but you're not going to be building up hundreds of layers and get frustrated. So that's important. The colour payoffs, great. Like it's probably not coming across on the cameras we've got here and on the screen, but they're crazy.
Yeah.
The other
Yeah.
thing that I just want to while we're here, just talk about the practicalities of this. So much work, and has gone into this in terms of the design of these for artists. We took all this feedback back from every paint we've ever made. And it's also probably worth noting that, the community helped with this.
Yeah.
We started beta testing this. I think it might have even been 2 years ago we sent out the
Yeah.
first
Well, I was
batch.
going to say, yeah. I mean, the beta. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about
Yeah.
how we incorporate the artists that are familiar to us, how we incorporate them in the process, because they're a
Yeah.
huge part of this.
They're a massive part of it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're making it for artists. And, I'm so sort of brought down to earth so many times by the community and I think something's brilliant and great. And I put it out and they tell me it's really not. Fine, great. And they tell me exactly what they want it to do. I can't thank the beta testers enough. We've got this die-hard community who help test everything we put out, and bless them, they wait for us to make it, and sometimes we have problems in the lab, and they just root for us all the way through it, and they get the stuff, and the feedback's just unbelievable because I hope they realise that they're doing that on behalf of all the artists who will ever use that material in the future. It's a really important job. And they put it through their paces and they really tell us. And with this one, with Pure, they were so important because actually about 95% of them loved the beta version. But they had some problems with the orange and the yellow specifically, and the black was letting the side down. So we kept going, and we know now that this is really great paint. We're confident in that. And likewise, when we start sharing this with people, which obviously, I want everyone in the world to have some, but we've got to be realistic about what we can do as a small studio. We're going to start by the beta testers are going to get an email that they can have access first as a thank you and too right, and so they should, and then we'll do that, and then other people will get an email later who've been supporting us for a long time. Maybe they didn't beta test it, but they've been part of the journey and they should have it. And then slowly, hopefully it will grow to being available to everyone one day. That's my vision for it. But it's going to take time. It's very special stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, amazing. I mean, I just love the fact that the beach testers are part of the process, and yet again, you're talking about an environment or a process that includes as opposed to excludes, and considers opinions as part of the manufacture of these things, the making of these things. So artists aren't just presented with this fait accompli at the end of the production process, which is like, well, there you go, that's your yellow, we're not doing anything, that's it. The fact that people have been part of this process is very exciting.
And I want the good, the bad, and the ugly. You know, it really is everybody's pain, and I've always said that. Going back even to Black 3 when we put it on Kickstarter, we didn't know how to make it. We didn't know how to pay for it. We couldn't. But the community rallied around it, and we got it. And that black paint is everybody's black paint. It's not mine. It's by the community for the community. It's by artists for artists. Everyone who works here in the studio is an artist in some respect, and they help make the paint and give it to other artists. Now, that's really important. It's sort of a DIY idea. It's us doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that comes through even in the design of this. When artists are in the studio working with us to make this stuff, we start to get tubes that you can unscrew and dip your brush in, but also you can squeeze it out. And it's stored that way up. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Because then it's always ready to go. There's no scraping it out the bottom.
Yeah.
And also when you store paint this actually, if you're listening, store your paint upside down. It's to stop the air getting in it. You're going to give you like another couple of years on it. None of that crusty top nonsense. So it's designed like that because we know because we use it every day. It's incredible. And the packaging, I've got to say, this is some of the best stuff we've ever designed. Like the boxes are absolutely gorgeous. I just think, and why? Because artists deserve it. When it arrives, I want it to feel special and wow.
Yeah.
Beautiful thing. It's a design object as well.
Yeah, that's always been part of it for me. Like when the box arrives, that's the start of the relationship. Not when they paint with it, or it's there's so much communicated by a nice bit of design on the packaging. It kind of says what we feel about you. We care enough to put this much effort into what the box is.
They deserve the
speaks
best.
volumes. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like it's the best paint in the world. It should look good, and you should feel good using it. You deserve that.
Yeah.
I
love the tubes. I think they're incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so
They're
glad
amazing.
we got there with this. They're so usable. Had so many people, because a lot of people with different abilities as well use the paint. And it's quite hard to get the lids off for some people and stuff. So we've tried to make it as accessible as possible.
Good stuff. Should we have a look then, maybe?
Shall we paint with them?
Yeah.
Okay, I can't wait to show you. Yeah. This is a really big moment. I've wanted to show the world this for so long. I don't know where to start. There's too much going on in front of me. It's like
what makes them good? Let's start with that.
Wow,
what do you like about a paint?
Let me use one and describe my experience of it. Maybe that's a start, and then we can look at some of the colours specifically. We can show you some of the cadmium-free options and stuff. I don't annoyingly have cadmiums with me to compare it to. I wish I did. I wasn't that prepared, but maybe people at home will do that themselves. Right. Let's start off with this beautiful colour, isn't it? So let's talk about what it's like to use it then. So as the lid comes off, you're going to notice straight away that it's a squeezable, but it's not going to come out until we want it to, which is really nice. And then I've got so much control over the amount I put out because of the squeeziness, which is so nice, because before you used to have to tip the bottle upside down to get it out and all the rest of it. So I've got complete control. I can also unscrew this and dip my, I can also unscrew it, and I could, if I wanted, dip my brush in, which is great for those bigger areas, and I can hold that while I'm painting a big canvas. So that feels really good to me. So far, I think that's one of the best paint bottles that I've ever had the luxury of using. I'm gonna to show you it. I'm just going to use some watercolor paper then, Now, obviously, it's acrylic paint, so it's going to stick on anything that acrylic paint normally sticks on. So it'll be fine on wood, it will be fine on walls, it will be fine on plastic and metal and everything else, obviously canvas and paper. I'm going to use it on paper. And this is a textured paper. This is almost a watercolour paper, so it's going to be very similar to canvas. Anyway, let's have a look at it. So I'm going in with the purple now. Fun fact, I'm actually colourblind against blue or purple. And I was freaking out there. I was like, is this the blue one or the purple one? But I worked it out. So I've got the purple. Little bit on the brush. I think this is really important. So many people, because they're used to using low quality paint, I think, scoop out a ton of it and have to put these really thick layers. The coverage is rough. So a little bit on the brush. And I use these soft synthetic brushes. And then as it goes down, oh my God, I can't describe there's a feeling, just a feel like painters know. You just know when it's good. It's like when you eat something that's like made by a proper chef, you know, like you're just like, yeah, but it's just that. And the coverage is absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
I mean, the
insane.
colour's so consistent. I mean, I can't actually believe it. That's with one go. Like that's not 2 coats, 3 coats, 4 coats, nothing. That is one of the most beautiful covering purples I've ever seen in my life. Now, where it gets exciting, and I'm not going to swatch all of these because we're just not going to have time on the podcast, but places it gets exciting are the white, which is very, very bright, extremely opaque, and able to tint all of these up to make lighter versions of themselves, which is super useful. You know, you're going to get this very beautiful, very light mauves and lilacs out of the purple with this, and then obviously these lovely sky blues are going to be possible. So the white is pivotal to all of this, and I will show you that because it's dazzling how bright it is. It's not the same as white 2.0. White 2.0 is the brightest white in the world. We haven't done that with this. You don't want stupid, bright, dazzling, reflects all the light in the world when you're trying to paint a picture. You just want a really solid, reliable, rock steady white that holds the work. And we've really done that with this. It's probably the nicest white I've certainly ever used. And it was the one that was highest ranked by the beta testers out of all the colours as well. They were really into this. Again, lovely texture, little bit on the brush, and the coverage is just unbelievably mind-blowing. And they're quite matte, just to say right out. They're very flat, they're very matte, they're self-leveling. You won't really see too many brush strokes. You can get very nice uniform finishes. If you don't want that, mix the gloss in. If you do want to see the brush marks, mix some body in. But if you want that super flat, super clean, ultra matte, flowy finish, this stuff's nuts. Shall I show you cadmium?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, it's hard to believe that these aren't cadmium, but they're better than cadmium. I mean, I can't, like, the day this happened, where we cracked this, I was literally jumping up and down and whooping about this because I know what we've got here. So I'll just go in with the red and then I'll show you the yellow. Bit of red. It's just nice. Like, everything about it is just nice. It should be a pleasure. Painting,
yeah, of course, of course.
You know, it's you and this stuff for hours on end. So, you know, again, a little bit on the brush, loads beautifully, flows gorgeous, isn't dropping off. You know, you've got that just right. And here it goes. Oh, look at that. You will not see anywhere an acrylic paint that goes on that smoothly, that brightly, that's one coat, and it's just gone for it, and I've got more left. That coverage is crazy. You won't even get that out of the cadmium. The richness of the red, I mean, I don't know how well it's coming across on the camera, but it's vivid, it's strong, it has depth, it's got strength to it. But again, it's got the power of the primary that you want to be able to mix all the other colours.
Yeah.
So, that red is just gorgeous. I'm going to show you the yellow because I'm really excited about it. Yellows are really hard, really, really, really hard. They're always too translucent. They never have the coverage you want. They're always kind of bitty. The one colour I'm always disappointed with, even in the biggest, richest paint companies, is the yellows. Always let me down, and that's one of the reasons I started making my own paint, because the yellow I could buy in the shop was never as good as what I was seeing in those galleries. So there it is. Gorgeous, gorgeous texture again. Little bit on the brush. That's again, like the thing with this is, a little bit goes so far, because of the quality, that it's crazy. So a tiny bit of yellow, and here we go. Look at that. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, you won't get that. You just won't get that. It's utterly beautiful. Shall I finish off by showing you the black? Because people are going to be interested with black.
Yeah.
It's obviously one of the things that I'm really well known for doing. This isn't the blackest black. It's really important. It doesn't absorb all the light and it doesn't make a black hole. But what it does do is provide one of the best acrylic blacks you've ever used. So if you use black in your work, maybe you outline, or maybe you mix black in to make tones. And I know our art school teachers told us not to do that, but everybody does. Let's be honest about it. It does all of that really, really well. It's a brilliant black. Let's look at it. Not all blacks are the same. There's a lot of, you can get redder ones, greener ones, blue ones. This is straight down the middle. Reliable. It is black. Oh, it's just a joy. And here it goes. Look at that. Now, you can't feel what I feel, but it's a pleasure to use it. And the way it comes off the brush, I mean, I could outline anything with that. And it just goes for miles. I mean, the tiniest bit just goes for miles. And I think actually we were very lucky we had a head start. We've been doing a lot with black for a lot of years. So It's no wonder we've made the best black acrylic. That was the easy one.
Yeah.
I still love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, does that sort of give you a sense of it?
Yeah, I just love the sort of sense of joy I get from you painting with them. That's such an important part of the artist's relationship with the material, isn't it? That there's some kind of exchange, that the paint gives you something when you use it, that it goes on nicely, that it remains adaptable and you can use it however you want to use it, and the colour's true to the thing that you have in your head, or at least there's some kind of flexibility there to create the thing that you need.
Yeah, I just don't want to hold you back. You don't want to be thinking. It's like if you're a cyclist or something, you don't want to be thinking about your bike breaking. It's just got to do the job. It's just got to perform. Yeah. Under those conditions where you've just had the best idea you've ever had, it's 3 a.m. and you have to get it out. And I want to give you the thing that you can just, it is there for you, and it just does it. And as they dry, I'm watching them dry now. I mean, the flatness, the matteness. I mean, just in front of my eyes, it's just gorgeous. Watching paint dry is fun. So I mean, obviously, I can't wait for people to have it. I mean, that's my thing. It's not gone full circle till artists are expressing themselves with this stuff.
Yeah.
But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That'll be the moment.
It needs to be in their hands. Finally, artists get the paint they deserve.
Exactly that. So I just can't wait. I'm really excited. So obviously, just to say, because people are going to be watching this, what's going to happen now is that we'll be emailing you. Keep an eye on your emails. That's how you're going to know about it. If we could put a link below somehow, Ben, if you could do that, just so that they can join a wait list or whatever from when it's ready. But if we've already got your email, keep an eye on it, because beta testers, you're going to be first, and then everyone else next, and then the wide world, I suppose they're going to join the wait list, and finally, when we've made enough to go around, your time will come.
Yeah,
that's it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's our way of, the people who are involved in the process,
Of course. Well, very excited. I can't wait to see what people do with it.
Yeah, me too. Incredible, man. Incredible.
It's an exciting day.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Well,
should we
thank
wrap it
you.
up there then?
Yeah, thanks a lot. That was a great chat. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
nice
it.
one, man. Yeah, it's very
Okay.
exciting times.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Take
See you
care.
later.
Bye.
Bye.